Yeah, let's do a really quick round of intros. So I'm Lane. I am an independent governance researcher. I have been a follower and a fan of the Blockstack project for a couple of years. I am based in New York, and so as I was getting into the blockchain ecosystem in 2017, I had the privilege to bump into Munib and Ryan and Patrick and a few of the other earliest stakeholders in the Blockstack project. And so have kind of, as I said, just been kind of following the project for a while and was brought on to help with governance and decentralizing all the things. I'm super excited about that. Yeah, so great to meet everyone I haven't met yet. Let's just go down the line if that's okay. Julia, would you mind doing a quick intro?
No problem. Hi, my name's Juliet. I'm a Blockstack evangelist. I'm also the founder of a Blockstack app called Dapity and a couple of others. I have a background as a lawyer. I'm also the founder and CEO of a health tech startup called Predictably Well. I learned about Blockstack probably about 2018 or 2017. I know that Tadia, who's also listening in on this phone call, had heard, is like one of the first people on the meetup group for San Francisco. And I think that might have been 2016 that he joined that meetup group. So we've been following them for a while and getting actively involved really last year in 2019.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro. That's really helpful. Brittany?
Sure. Hi, I'm Brittany. I work at Blockstack PBC, and I'm helping set up the foundation. So, working within this group to figure out, what is the proposal that we want to put together. So I'll actually be helping spin the foundation into a new entity outside of Blockstack. My background with Blockstack is that I was an early investor in the project when I was at Union Square Ventures. So I've known the team and the project since it was like early 2014. So it's been, 6 years now in progress, but I joined the team about a year ago.
Thank you, Brittany. True OG. It's an honor to have you with us. We can learn a lot from you. Awesome. Thank you. Let's go to Harold, please.
Yes. Thank you, Conley. So I'm Harold Davis. I'm based in Fresno, California. I'm a Blockstack evangelist since I think 2018 now, late 2018. I first discovered Blockstack and was kind of been lurking in the community, following the meetings and following the forum or Slack at the time. Things like this since I think 2016. After finding out about Blockstack on a podcast, crazy enough, back in 2016, right after digesting for the first time a lot of publications that came out of a research group named Generative Justice out of RPI. I'd been following them for a few years. Before that, with minimal publications they had been putting out, but then they put out a whole slew of publications packaged together in 2016, and then shortly after that I found Blockstack, and so it was a really nice primer for somebody like me who wasn't as familiar with the open source world, and kind of gave me a really comprehensive grasp of the power of open source in a very particular lens, and so since then, I've been following people like Primavera fairly closely since I want to say 2017, 18 at least, and since last year, for about a year now, I've been working with a Indigenous council up in the Montreal area of Canada. That is actually the same Indigenous group that is very important to the thesis of the Generative Justice Research Group out of RPI. And so since becoming an evangelist, we've kind of repackaged our approach as an evangelist once we've made contact with this Indigenous council. And I'm excited to show you guys our platform. I think Juliet has seen a little bit of our white paper already, but as it goes into review, I'm excited to bring it to this working group and and show where some of the overlap of values and interests there may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. Yes, I noticed you helpfully shared some of these resources and ideas, including, mentioning some of Primavera's talks and generative justice and stuff in the governance working group. So for those who may have missed those links, scroll back, they're there. And I've been trying to grab links as I've seen them and add them to our resources page on GitHub. So that's something else that you all can help contribute to as well. So yeah, there's a wealth of information and knowledge there that I think we can tap into. So thank you so much for that, Harold. Let's go to Jason, please.
All right, so I'm connecting today from my phone, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. But I'm actually really new to the Blockstack ecosystem, and it's kind of a exciting discovery for me that started at the beginning of February. And it was something that I stumbled on, but I am so happy that I did, because my goal with my business right now, I'm really trying to convert companies to use open source software and to find a way to not only use it, but to give back to the developers. And I love the idea both of what Blockstack is doing towards this user-owned internet, and as well as the idea that we can create some sort of fun business models and some of the other things we're talking about towards making sure the developers are included as part of the process. So overall, just really happy to be here. My background and experience, I've been an IT guy for about 15 years now. I have worked for small companies, large companies, owned my own companies. And overall, that's what led me to the mission now of trying to really bring this open source revolution. And what I see now is truly a Web3 revolution to life as well. That's my quick background.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jason. That's great. Definitely align with some of the values you're bringing up there. All right. We'll go to Jenny for the last intro.
Hey everyone, I'm Jenny, the digital community partner at Blockstack. I joined the team last summer, and I had been sort of a fan right before, but I feel like I'm also a little newer to the community. And since joining, it's been awesome to see how much work has gone into just advancing this project. I've worked with a lot of you in groups and individually before, and I think these working groups have just really shown me how dedicated and talented the community truly is. And I'm just super excited to see all the discussion, especially around governance. It's a particular topic that I've been really interested in since joining the crypto space. So yeah, really happy to be here and really enjoying all of the discussion you guys are having.
Thank you, Jenny. All right. So I'm just kind of looking at the agenda here. So let's kind of discuss updates over the past 2 weeks. I'll go ahead and dive in and kind of give my update first. There's a bunch of things going on. I'm pretty excited to share them. If you've been following along in the governance working group channel, which I think everyone here has been, then probably none of this is news to you, but for the sake of completeness and having it on the record on the call minutes, so to speak, I'll just kind of quickly run through the list. So the first thing is that a number of different channels have been established for what I'm calling the StacksGov, or of course, Stacks Ecosystem Governance Initiative or working group over the past couple of weeks. So these include a YouTube channel, a GitHub organization, of course, the Discord working group that Jenny set up for us. We have I believe it's called a category on the Discourse, which is the Blockstack Community Forum, right? That's forum.blockstack.com. Am I missing any kind of resources or channels? Just jump in and let me know if I've missed anything that anyone else set up. Cool. Yeah, so most of these, I guess couple points to make here. The first is that most of these are completely new and completely independent of PBC, and they are sort of at the disposal of the community. This includes the GitHub organization. I'm happy to add people to that organization as contributors, and then they'll have the ability to create new repositories. And of course, all the repositories that exist there are public. And so I know Jason has already come in and submitted some PRs against them, and other people are more than welcome to do that. The same goes for like the YouTube channel as well. So we posted the recording of the first call, which happened about 2 weeks ago, onto the YouTube channel. So this recording should live there as well. Yeah, I think that's it for resources. Under the GitHub, there's a few repositories. So there is one called resources, which, as I said before, is just sort of a list of links and resources, both about Stacks governance specifically, as well as about governance more generally for people who want to kind of get up to speed or take like a quote unquote governance 101 crash course. Please contribute to that as others have begun to do. There's a PM, which is a project management repository where I'm kind of just using a list of cards in a Kanban fashion to track all the different things that are in flight for this project. So this includes setting up the resources, includes the survey, which I'll talk about in a moment. It includes scheduling calls, et cetera. And also feel free to open issues in any of these repositories, you know, for new tasks or just things that come to mind. I want to really reiterate this. These should all be thought of as community resources, and I don't want to be a centralized bottleneck to any of them. So like really make them your own, you know, just begin opening issues, commenting on things, et cetera, on all these channels. I think that's, oh, there's also another repository there under the StacksGov GitHub organization for the regular updates. I guess I'll go ahead and talk about that next. So one thing I'd like to do is begin to publish just a brief snapshot, written snapshots every week to 2 weeks. I haven't figured out exactly the right cadence yet. And it will really just be a written version of a lot of what we're going over on these calls. So just a chance for the community, for people who prefer consuming information in a written format, to very quickly skim them. I'm envisioning them being something like 1 page long, to quickly get up to speed on the must-know things that happened over the past week, especially, you know, for people who may not be following the working group as actively. I know it tends to kind of scroll by very quickly sometimes, right? So very easy to consume format, which you can subscribe to easily on GitHub. Let me go ahead and post the link here for folks who may have missed it. So this is the first one that I'm working on. And so as with everything else on GitHub, this is also a permissionless thing. I encourage everyone to submit updates to these open issues. If you want to add anything to these updates before they go out. I haven't figured out the right timing for this. I guess we can probably send the first one today. Maybe we want them to coincide with the calls. That might make sense. We could kind of quickly go over them on the calls and then just make sure we haven't missed anything essential. As for how to distribute them, for now, I'm kind of thinking they'll just live in GitHub, and people who want to subscribe to them can click the watch button on that particular repository on GitHub to be updated about them. But we could also move to Substack. They could be published on probably the forum as well. Let me pause for a second there and see if anyone else has any thoughts or updates or comments on any of those things, including the regular updates. I see we have
Hi,
a
this
couple.
is Juliet.
Hi, Juliet. I'm sorry, I was just saying we have a couple other people join. Hi, Dan. Hi, Deepak. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead, Juliet.
I was just thinking, I'm happy to put a link in the Discord so that people can see it and know that it's, you know, if they're not watching the GitHub, I know I am watching it, but, you know, that they can see that there's new material there, and then they can watch the GitHub themselves.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I am definitely a little biased here. As a software developer, I'm very inclined to kind of keep a lot of project management and content and stuff in GitHub. I recognize that that's not necessarily part of everyone's workflow. So I think it'd be a great idea to post links and just remind people that that's living in GitHub. And if they don't, you know, if they're not in GitHub every day the way some of us are, they'd still be updated and aware that there's sort of things that have been published there. Cool. All right. Let me mention the community survey as well. I think I have it open here, so I'll go ahead and post this link in the Zoom chat for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I know a couple of people have come in and added some comments and some questions and things, and so I appreciate that. Please feel free to do that if you haven't already. So this is the first structured initiative to gather feedback from the broader Stacks community about governance. We'd like to release this survey this week, maybe as soon as tomorrow. I think if everyone, so, you know, this link has already been passed around a bit. And as I said, some people have commented. Maybe we'll give folks today to kind of come in and comment if they haven't had a chance to do that yet. And then we'll plan to turn this into something like a Google form so people can very easily respond to it and sort of begin to pass that link around the community. So please do come in and comment on it, add questions. You know, if you think something should be changed or removed or added or whatever, this would be a good time to do that. It is modeled on a similar survey that was done in the Ethereum community last year, which went pretty well. There were several hundred responses, and there was some really interesting data analysis that was done based on those responses. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions about the survey?
Sure. So I know that we want to get input. How far wide should we think about the people who would participate? And maybe you have experience from the Ethereum community, because I think, you know, there's a lot of people who are very involved in the Blockstack community, and then there's some more passive users, as well as maybe people in crypto who aren't part of the Blockstack community, but may have some input on governance. So just thinking about like the type of people that we would want to encourage to take the survey.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. That's a really excellent question. My gut feeling on this is the more responses we get, the better. And one of the reasons I'm saying that is because the, let me just make sure I'm not making this up. The very first couple of questions here within the demographic category, I see. Section 2, the community category, kind of asks, like, do you identify as a member of the Blockstack community? You know, have you done this or done that within the community, like used dApps or participated in app mining? So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to hear from sort of groups of stakeholders who have been less active and maybe even people who don't necessarily consider themselves members of the community or the ecosystem yet. And yeah, I mean, I for one am very interested in hearing their responses as well. And I think that having this question here would allow us to see if, you know, for example, that group of people has a different perspective than people who have been more active in the ecosystem. So yeah,
Great.
Short answer is let's distribute this as widely as possible.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Any other thoughts on the survey? Questions, concerns, celebrations?
Yeah, I was gonna ask your experience in Ethereum of what happened with these analytics, what was done with the results in terms of any foundation or anything that was established with Ethereum, or just some of your insights there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking for the link. So there, here's one link I can share. I'm going to post this in the Zoom as well. So this is a slide deck that was put together with the results. It's a bunch of graphs. There's also, in the same GitHub repository where this PDF file lives, there's also some raw response data as well. So this will give you a sense for some of the analysis that was done. And these were done by an individual named Eva Balin, who's a sort of core contributor in the Ethereum ecosystem. She works for the Ethereum Foundation. And she conducted this survey completely independently in the first or second quarter of last year. I mean, just, you know, kind of eyeballing some of these like word clouds and graphs and things, you know, there's always different ways you can slice and dice the data. And one of the nice things about the way this survey was done was that the raw data was published and made available for anyone who wanted to come in and do their own analysis and kind of draw their own conclusions. But I do think that the sort of types of analysis that Eva posted here are really, really helpful. And as I said, kind of just, you know, flipping through some of these charts and graphs and word clouds and things, I find it quite enlightening about the community. And so I would look forward to doing similar things with the results of the survey in the Blockstack community.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. It looks good.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Harold. Okay, so if there's no more comments on the survey, the next thing I have on the agenda is just a stand up, and this is a very open-ended thing. I guess I'll kick off. So for those who may not be doing stand-ups as regularly as some of us may be, the idea here is very, very briefly to just let everyone know kind of what's the last thing you did or what are you working on right now. If there's any blockers or anything that you could use help with, and then what you're planning to work on over the next few days or kind of between now and the next call. And to be very clear, like, you know, no one is required to participate in this aside from me and maybe Brittany. But if you do have updates you want to share, please feel free to do so, or if there are things you could use help with. Yeah, I think we'd all be happy to hear what you're working on and what you could use help with. I will kick off. So what I'm working on right now is, number one, this survey. I want to kind of remind everyone to get in some last minute thoughts on it in the next day or so, and then clean it up and turn it into a form and get that released in the next day or two. I'm also working on a series of one-on-one interviews with sort of core ecosystem stakeholders. So I've done 2 of these so far. I have a couple more scheduled in the coming days. The ones I've done so far have been with folks who work at PBC, but I'd like to begin conducting some of these calls with sort of broader community members, more broadly defined. And so kind of working on just coordinating those and getting those calls on the calendar and cleaning up the notes from the calls that I have already done and sharing them with everyone. And then beginning to kind of draw some conclusions from those. Those will go into a report that I will share with everyone. I guess other than that, just sort of basic project management stuff, right? So organizing these calls, notes, the stuff I mentioned on GitHub, that sort of thing. I don't think I have any blockers. I had some questions that Brittany and I discussed a few days ago about you know, just kind of making sure that the workflow is clear and you know, figuring out if things need approval or go through legal review or anything like that. But I think we're on the same page. So I think I'm clear of blockers right now. And over the next week, I guess I kind of touched upon that. I'll be working on the survey. I'll be working on calls and I guess beginning to think about the main deliverable for the first phase of this governance project, which is the just comprehensive governance proposal. And I will reach out to everyone for their feedback on that as well. Does anyone else want to do a quick stand up like I just did?
Hi, this is Juliet. I'm right now. I'm focused on reading the more academic articles related to governance in crypto and blockchain, and so there's a lot of there's a lot of books and other things that are all relevant to this topic, whether they're directly on blockchain or other things like Harold has introduced, which is the generative justice concept, or going into free and open source software. So there's a lot of different pieces that I think meld into governance and governance for blockchain and crypto. And I don't have any blockers with that, other than there's a lot of reading to do that I need to get to in my side time. But no blockers. That's about it for me. I may have some questions as we go along about the stakeholder interviews and when the questionnaire will be released.
Cool. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Juliet. Yeah, feel free to ask those questions later on the call, or you can ask them in the chat here, or on Discord or on GitHub or anywhere else. We have a lot of channels. I appreciate the update. I think the information that you're putting together is going to be incredibly valuable for us and for other folks who want to get up to speed and contribute to governance. Yeah, I don't want to call people out by name because, as I said, it should be volunteer basis. But if anyone else wants to jump in and do a stand up, go for it.
Yep. So this is Brittany. So working on some of the setup for the foundation. So basically the governance will be executed most likely by the foundation. So talking to some potential board members, you know, I think part of this process over the coming months is getting community input as well on different members who will play key roles in the foundation. So working on kind of a framework in which to solicit that feedback. And then the other thing is this week is talking to a few existing crypto foundation folks or people who've worked on governance and worked on executing it to just get a better landscape of kind of what's working, what's been a challenge, and what lessons we can take back to Blockstack. So my goal is to be able to summarize those conversations, potentially record them if people are comfortable, and then share the insights back with the group here.
Awesome. Thanks for the update.
Yeah, this is Harold. I think what I'll be doing is trying my hand at the new workflows proposed for this group and others. Trying to gather. I think I've been most active in the Discord channel, trying to gather some of my thoughts there, and a lot of my thoughts have been sparked by other folks in the community, like Friedger, and some of the things he's posted in the forum as it relates to governance. And I've kind of been sticking to those and trying to expand on them with things that they kind of opened up just in the discussion for governance. And so I'll be gathering these different points that I've been discussing in the Discord and trying to get them in their proper place in the new project management workflow as I get used to that in all of the working groups. But that's about all as it relates to this working group. Thank you, Conley.
Thanks for the update, Harold. Appreciate your sharing that. And just a thought as you, and I guess this goes for everyone, as we're all kind of getting used to the new workflow. First thought is feel free to suggest kind of changes to the workflow. I've kind of done my best to put in place things that I know have worked well, quote unquote, best practices from other groups, but very open to suggestions about how to do things differently or better. And the second is, yeah, as you're sort of going through resources on your own, if you do find a set of resources or ideas that are useful, you know, feel free to, as I said before, kind of throw them really anywhere. I mean, into the Discord is fine, the forum is fine, or even into an issue on GitHub, so we can kind of record that and make that part of our knowledge base for other folks going forward. All right, does anyone else want to do a quick stand up?
Sure. This is Jason, and basically right now I'm working on a getting started with business models post, which is going to kind of go along with that getting started with governance idea, and I'm looking at the symmetries between the two. I see a lot of things that kind of intertwine in the topics, and also working on a little blog post about how to get involved and kind of talk a little more about the repo and working with it and doing some of the project management. So I'll just document some of what I went through, and hopefully that'll help others as we get more involved and use this outlet. Other than that, I'm just trying to keep up with discussions, and probably the biggest challenge is time, but it's nice. You know, if we can slice out little parts like this, I think it'll all work out in the end.
Great, thanks for sharing, Jason.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Deepak here. Can you hear me on?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear, Deepak. And I think we missed the chance to hear your intro earlier. So if you wouldn't mind taking 60 seconds to just introduce yourself, that would be really lovely.
My team is building a decentralized social network, and we've been building using Blockstack tools for past year and a half. Basically, I've been a long time community member, and we have been participants of App Mining right from the beginning, I guess, last October. And fortunately or unfortunately, our future plans are I guess mostly dependent on how the Blockstack transition is going to be. So we are just looking forward for how this governance initiative is going to shape up, and looking forward for that.
Thanks, Deepak. We're happy to have you here. Welcome to the working group, and really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and concerns and ideas.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, that's everyone. Dan gave us an update by text message, so thank you everyone for that. Let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Stacks Foundation, and that is for Brittany.
Hey, yeah. So, what would you like me to cover?
Oh boy, I think it's up to you. Yeah, I guess you kind of gave us part of this update earlier when you said that you were doing things like, interviewing potential board members. Just wondering if there's anything else in the works that we should know about.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the update on that is thinking about timeline. We're kind of focused on, can we begin to set up the legal entity for the foundation before May 1st? So we just entered March, so 2 months from now. The actual setup of a foundation is, and a foundation is like a nonprofit organization. We're targeting incorporation in Singapore. Just some of the pros and cons of different jurisdictions. That one actually works well with where the project has current stakeholders and interests. So that Singapore foundation only takes a few days to set up. So the legal entity is quite fast. It's actually all of the pieces that are required in that setup that take more time. So we would issue a charter. That charter, we would want to make reference to this governance work that we're doing now. We also will have board members selected. So again, that's where I'm spending some time now, is figuring out the best way to solicit community feedback on that, as well as talk to some existing stakeholders who would meet the requirements necessary for the board to serve the foundation. So the next 4 to 6 weeks is really about recruitment, getting feedback, and getting the governance done. And then after that, the next 2 weeks will be more sort of tactical in terms of getting the legal entity set up and spun out. I guess the related thing that I'll be working on is just around the assets of the foundation. So since it will be a new entity, that means like a new website, a new, maybe brand, a new name for it, a number of just like mechanical pieces that I think are important, but have a little more wiggle room of kind of evolving as the foundation gets set up. So that's, those are kind of back of mind. But if anyone has experience in this or just has some ideas on this, I'll make sure that there's a way to solicit that feedback too.
Thank you for the update, Brittany. That's really helpful and exciting to hear about the progress. I see a hand from Deepak. Thank you for using the raise hand feature, Deepak. What, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Brittany. Great to know the progress which you are doing. I just want you to, can you throw some more light on the process of how are you going to select what is the process of actually shortlisting and selecting the board members and the other members of the other office bearers of the foundations as well? Is there a formal procedure which has been zeroed in?
Yeah, so with the foundation, the board of directors, the soft criteria that we're using is we're looking for board members who are independent so that they don't currently like work for Blockstack PBC or have like a large controlling share of PBC entity. We want people who have a token ownership already so that they have sort of that invested interest and they plan to hold it for a very long period of time. So that they're structurally set up to do so. So we do have a number of investors who have board experience. Anyone on the board will also need to have directors and officers insurance, which most funds already have. But if it were an independent individual and they took a formal board seat, it may they would need to acquire that, which is it can be quite a large cost. So one of the ways to think about making sure that the board is comprehensive with the community values is having independent board members as well. And those can be added later, but we will need at least, I think, 2 founding board members in order to incorporate. So with that, I think we're looking at our existing community, our existing token base that has that sort of board experience and sophistication. Now with the independent board members, I think that is where we can think a lot about the governance and how that works, how voting works, like how much power does the board have? Do they need to solicit comments from the community before they make decisions? So these kind of all tie back to governance. And then I think the only, kind of tangential related role is something called a member, which is not a formal board member where you're taking on the fiduciary like responsibility of the foundation, but instead members who have interests that may have influence over the governance or the rights of the foundation over time. And that's what's really interesting about Singapore foundations, is that to be a member, sometimes it means as little as like donating like $1. And so the access that we can provide to the community is much larger in the member category, but how exactly we want to use that is something that we're currently exploring. So it's not set in stone yet, but we know that that mechanism actually is what makes a Singapore foundation favorable as well. Like not all of the board can, the board doesn't have full control. It actually can be spread across different stakeholders.
Yeah, great. So I have actually two follow-up questions on that. First is there any restriction in terms of citizenship of the board of directors? And second is, are we open for crowdsourcing recommendations from the community?
Yeah, I think we're definitely open to the crowdsourcing from the community. I think that the mechanism in which to do that that's where I could use some feedback, whether it's a survey, whether it's just people submitting names. So definitely open to that. In terms of like jurisdiction, there are requirements of Singapore foundations that at least one member has to be a resident of Singapore. So, that's required. And then the other, I don't think that there are other jurisdictional requirements. There may be some general, like OPAC countries may be harder to have a board member, but I think in general, it kind of keeps it fairly open. But I can follow up just to ensure that. And like I said, I think we view that the independent board members, that will be a process over, that could be a process over time. So if we don't decide on those over the next 6 weeks, we will have the time, once the foundation is established, to always add members or add board members as needed. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of flexibility, and we want to make sure we give that process a lot of thought, especially as we're bringing on people who are community stakeholders. But great. But yeah, so if you have any recommendations, I'm happy to take them, or we can have this as a discussion in Discord. That'd be great.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks for your question.
Thanks for the update, Brittany, and Deepak. Thank you for those really excellent questions as well. Yeah, so I for one, am very excited about the process of contributing to just, I guess, the governance of the foundation, and I'm excited about the foundation existing and about this process evolving. And I think there will be many touch points between Brittany and her team and what all of us here are doing in the community, including the sort of points that we just discussed. So yeah, Brittany, thank you for the update. We'll make sure that the community stays in the loop about all these developments and has a ample opportunity to contribute suggestions and recommendations. Do we have any other questions, anyone here, regarding the stuff that Brittany brought up?
Yeah, I have a question about the role of the independent or the community, the board members that you were mentioning, not the initial board members that you're seeking, but then what it sounds as though it's community board members or independent board members. I wonder what the roles are generally and what you anticipate the roles to be, and if this is too premature, let me know.
Yeah, I think those are great questions, and I think the way that we've sort of thought about the progression is like figuring out what the foundation will do, and that's part of that governance. Like, is the foundation responsible for multiple work streams and multiple decisions? Is there a narrower set that the foundation is responsible for? And then how do we make sure that the board reflects the needs of what the foundation will be? So part of this discussion around governance and what that initial draft proposal will be will help set the stage of like, okay, if this is what we intend to do and this is what we need to accomplish, how can we support it with the the board of directors and the independent board members based on their skill set and what we need them to kind of accomplish. So I think it is kind of happening in parallel, but I think it would be hard to start formally recruiting for those independents without having clarity on like what exactly we want them to help accomplish. So yeah, so that's why the governance to me feels like the first piece that the more we figure out what it is, the easier it will be to pick those members. So yeah, maybe
Thank
it's
you,
like,
Brittany.
yeah, maybe like next week we'll have more clarity, or 2 weeks from now we'll have more clarity. But I would love to have you guys like thinking about too, like, are there other systems in which you've seen, you know, getting community input or ownership at a structural level into a company, and making that pretty fluid? Because I think even thinking of a board of directors, it's like, okay, how much power do they have? How often are they voting? Like, what are the types of things that would be taken to the board versus taken to the community? I think that for me, I have a lot of like open questions, and I think I have a rough sense, but I don't want to use, you know, parallel examples as like the default for us. So instead, I would rather have it be evolutionary, and probably even in the first 6 to 12 months, using that time once a foundation is set up to make sure we're in the right place. So giving as much flexibility as possible will probably be the default, and then we can always put in more structural pieces to make sure that it actually reflects what we intend to do.
Cool. Yeah, very exciting. I think the process by which you guys are going about this is novel and participatory, and yeah, it sounds like kind of the right things are happening in the right order. So I'm really excited to, as I said, well, I'm repeating myself, excited to see it happen, excited to contribute. I'm sure everyone else here is feeling the same way. All right, so in the interest of time, we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I'm going to keep moving. We have a couple more quick things to get through. The first is just open anyone else who has any other updates they want to share. I guess we kind of already did this as part of the stand-up, but if you have any other ideas or announcements or resources you want to share, please jump in now and do that. I'd just like to leave a slot open at towards the end of the call for this. Okay, cool. It sounds like there's no additional updates. If I missed anyone, feel free to kind of throw something in the chat here or click the hand raise button. Great. So the next item on the agenda is sort of a recap of, let's say, action items or calls to action. Again, I think that most everyone in this group is already familiar with most or all of these because we've discussed them on the call and they've been mentioned now in a few channels, including in the Discord chat. But just as a recap, I'll go ahead and post links here. So the first is that we have this resources repository in GitHub. Here's the link for that. This is, you could think of it like a wiki or like a knowledge base. It's pretty basic right now. It's just kind of a, well, I think there's 2 pages. There's a page that has just a general list of links, and there's a second page that has the recordings and the decks from these calls. So again, the resources from this call will be added to that. But please feel free to go and propose changes, submit pull requests, submit issues if there's things that you want to add or change or ask questions about. Some folks have already done that, so we appreciate that. The second is the updates. So I posted this link before, I'll post it again. This is a pull request which contains the draft of the first update. These updates will go out weekly or bi-weekly. You folks can kind of help me figure out how often we should be doing them. So please contribute to those. The survey is the third one. I will post the link to that again here as well for anyone who missed it the first time. So we, as a reminder, we plan to distribute this survey in the next couple of days as widely as possible. So please, if you haven't yet had a chance, take a look at that, make proposals, propose changes, ask questions, etc. And then once that goes out, that will be announced on the Discord. Please help us spread the word about that. You can kind of retweet or just kind of email people and just share the link with folks that you think could contribute to that by answering the survey questions. Did I miss anything? Are there any other calls to action that we should share with the group right now? Okay, great. So this is great timing.
Thanks,
So,
Lane.
oh, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, I didn't have a next call to action. I think, well, maybe it's a question call to action. So I know Discord is sort of super active, and then the survey is coming out. Is there, where can we immediately look for the survey, and are there any ideas how members of this call can help distribute that survey to ensure that we're getting participation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the right place for the survey to live is probably either a type form or a Google form. I'm totally open to preferences, regarding the choice of those two or other platforms I may be unfamiliar with, but just, I'm optimizing here for making it as quick and easy as possible for folks to respond. I think the Ethereum one was done as a Google form, which seemed to work reasonably well. So yeah, if you have thoughts about that, then feel free to share them now or later. And as for distributing it, yeah, I mean, I think the folks in this call probably are more familiar with the Blockstack community than I am. Twitter is definitely one channel for that. I'd imagine maybe Reddit is another. Are there other places that you folks think that we should, make an effort to kind of blast this and share it and make sure as many people as possible see it? Brittany, do you think we should have a blog post about it as well? Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, we can definitely have a blog post. We also have, community Twitter channels. We have an email list. I think for Blockstack BVC, we have a number of ways that we can promote it to the community. I think the question is just sort of around deadline of when we want that distributed, because we have a regular cadence of emails. So adding that to a newsletter, I think would be, I want to make sure that there's plenty of time that people can see it before our sort of self-imposed deadline. And then I think in general too, it's just where are other places that aren't Blockstack properties that maybe people are hanging out and learning about this. So I know some of the members of this call are participating in app mining. I know that there's particular channels in which they use to communicate about app mining and feedback and things like that. So I think it's just more encouraging peers to participate, which may be more effective than just, PBC says, hey, take the survey. We will get a number of people that way, I'm sure. But if you or talk to a number of people who are active in the community and maybe they just aren't checking these channels, maybe it's hey, did you know that this survey is coming up? It's really important. Kind of giving that personal buy-in of what this governance means to you, and then sharing that, to me, I think could just get more participation potentially.
Cool. Thank you for making that point. I definitely agree. I think it is important that we all contribute and help spread the word like you're describing, and do that on places that are not just PBC channels, to make it very clear and just really reemphasize to everyone that this is a community initiative. And just as a reminder, that is how things happened when this was done in the Ethereum community last year. It sort of wasn't run by the Ethereum Foundation or any sort of formal official entity. It was sort of a community thing. So yeah, let's all help spread the word, as Brittany suggested.
Yeah, I've seen in other places too, just even the, hey, I just took this survey, here's why I think it's important, if you want to take it too, sort of that, I think these are, the nonprofit world uses a lot of this kind of thing. So, being foundation focused, it's that peer buy-in is great. So thanks.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm actually thinking, as you mentioned it, maybe we could add a share on social media button to the survey. I'm not sure if that's kind of possible on platforms like Google Forms, but I will look into it. And if it is, if you can kind of, one click to retweet or share or something, I think that would be really helpful for the reason you're describing, just kind of creating peer, not peer pressure. We don't want to pressure anyone, just peer awareness, let's call it.
Get out the vote, right? Everyone's
Exactly.
opinion matters.
Cool. All right. So the last thing I have on the agenda, oh, sorry, Brittany, I also wanted to respond. You asked about timing. My gut feeling is we definitely want a minimum of about 2 weeks. I think probably a maximum of about a month, just because we want to make sure that at some point we kind of close this and leave time for analysis and make sure that it gets fed into things like the governance proposal. And as for, choosing the exact right point, maybe we can kind of wait and see what the response is, and we can kind of increase our outreach efforts if, we don't have many responses after the first week or two. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
I think so. I don't know if people want to vote in chat or hop in. Yes, I see Harold says yes.
Thanks, Harold. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we're past an hour now. This is something we can definitely discuss asynchronously. Last essential item for this call, I just want to quickly kind of poll everyone here. I know we were a little late in getting this call scheduled. Thank you again to Juliet for her help organizing that. Do people here feel like they'd like these calls to happen weekly or every other week? I'm kind of happy to go either way, depending how people feel.
I'm voting for weekly.
Okay, we have 2 votes for weekly, Deepak and Juliet. Harold agrees. Okay, I think we have a quorum. Does anybody strongly disagree with having calls like this weekly? Okay, I'm going to call that consensus. So thank you for voting on that. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Great. So I guess the last question then is around call schedule. And the one concern I have is that I know some of the other working groups have calls in similar time slots. I'm personally happy to stick with this time slot if it works. And I guess it probably does work for most of the people in this call because we're all here. But I do want to make sure we make it as accessible to as many community members as possible. I know Jenny had mentioned to me, I think Jenny had to drop the call early. She recommends 10 a.m. Eastern, which is this time slot. And it looks like there are other working group calls on Monday and Thursday. That's the business model group and the proof of transfer group. And so we were originally discussing Tuesday or Wednesday for this call. Do people have any strong feelings about days of the week for this call? Okay, so I'm going to tentatively propose the same time slot, which is 7 a.m. West Coast, 10 a.m. East Coast. What is that? 11, 12, 1, 2, I think 3 p.m. UTC time on Tuesday for this call, just so we avoid a conflict with the other working group call, which is also on Monday. But again, I will post this on the relevant channels, and I want to give everyone a chance to jump in and share if they feel that a different time would be better. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining the call today.
Thanks, Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conley. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, folks. Same to everyone here. Thank you again for joining. And yeah, we'll share the recording from this call, and maybe we'll be able to get some notes typed up as well. Great. Have a great day, everyone.